Welcome back, guys. Ben here, and today we are back with more of the Last Caretaker lore explored, and this is going to be covering some of the logs that we can get in update 2 since the game updated. So that's what we're going to check out. That's what we're going to have a look at and read through these ones. And at the time of recording, the update 3 beta is out, so we'll soon have another one with all of those. Now, what we don't have are all the phone calls, so I will have that in a separate video, because these phone calls appear once per day per login. So every time you log in once that day, you'll get a phone call, and I've still got a few more to do. So we're going to start with stack transfer, and if you've missed any of the previous ones, you want to hear me read those out, then please, there'll be a link to the playlist in the description below, where it's literally just me going through the batches of lore and reading them out. Hope you enjoy it. Sit back, relax, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump straight into the video. Stack transfer. Biomarker on paper. Witness in truth. Page 1. Clearance. March 11th. The letter used clean words. Biomarker irregularity. It said our family would be moved for safety, as if safety is something you can mail. We were given 12 hours to pack. No appeal. No explanation beyond that one phrase. My wife asked, "What biomarker?" The officer didn't answer. He just avoided her eyes like it was contagious. Page 2. What we saw. 2 days before the letter, I was at the depot when the crate fell. Not a dramatic crash, just a heavy mistake, a corner split, and a glimpse of what was inside. Seed capsules, cold lit, and arranged like ammunition. A supervisor snapped the lid shut with shaking hands and told everyone to turn away. No one spoke after. Not because we agreed, because we understood the cost of speaking. Departure, March 15th. They didn't call it exile. They called it a transfer. The boat had no insignia. The crew didn't introduce themselves. The pier we left from was not on any public map. My son waved anyway. He waved at the water, at the air, at anything that might wave back. My daughter kept asking if we were going somewhere to be healed. I told her yes. I hated myself for it. Page 4. Tower, March 16th. Rock rising straight out of the sea, too narrow to feel real, too tall to feel kind. A concrete pier like a tongue. Stairs carved into stone like punishment made practical. Tiny huts bolted to the face of the tower. No gardens, no stores, no paths, only vertical. A faded board near the top platform read Stack Amen. I didn't know then that names could be used to make cruelty sound inevitable. Page 5. The radio, March 18th. There was an AM radio sealed in a metal box. Beside it, a laminated card titled The Order. It told us exactly how to speak, not to communicate, to remain acceptable. Identity, condition, confession, petition, offering, blessing. My wife read the confession part twice and said, "They want us to police ourselves." I said nothing. Silence is the first thing you learn here. Page 6. First prayer, March 19th. This is Stack Amen. Platform 2. Speaker, Ollie. Day count, 1. Body, fever, salt wounds, cough. Mind, steady, afraid. Supplies, water free, food 2, heat, no. Confession. I told my children we were safe. I asked for a voice. Offering, wind south. Tide low at dusk, drift debris near the pier. I bless Stack Beacon. May your stairs hold. May your water stay sweet. If you hear me, you are not alone. Click, click, click. A reply came back thin, distant, real. My son smiled like he'd been handed a blanket. Page 7. The official story, April 2nd. They radioed once from a boat that stayed far offshore. No docking, no faces, just a voice reading from a sheet. Your biomarker status remains under review. No medicine arrived. No testing kit. No follow-up questions. A biomarker you can't name is not a diagnosis. It's a label. It's a reason that doesn't have to be proven. Page 8, The Truth. May 14th, 2060. My wife stopped saying biomarker like she ever believed it. She started saying, we saw something. And then she'd swallow the rest of the sentence like it was poison. We speak around the truth the way you speak around a wound. You can't clean. Careful. Quiet. Pretending not to touch it. Because if we name it too directly, it will become real in a way that demands a response. And there is no response here, except silence. Page 9. Heresy. August 9th. My daughter asked why we don't send our coordinates, why we don't beg for rescue like in stories. I showed her the line on the card, unanswered. Permanent silence for heresy. Even the outcasts enforce it. Not because they're cruel, because hope can get you killed, and panic can get everyone killed. This is how they build a prison without bars. They made the prisoners guard the rules. Page 10. Day count. March 11th. This is Stack Armin, Platform 2, Speaker Ollie, day count 365. Body cold, weak, shaking. Mind steady, tired. Supplies water 1, food 0, heat no. Confessions. I kept them quiet. I asked for 1 more decade. Offering. Ice forming at the pier edge. Lights on the far line at midnight. I bless Stack Heaven. May your stairs hold. May your water stay sweet. If you hear me, you are not alone. Click, click, click. Years. A biomarker that was never measured. Page 11. Final note. Undated. Hunger is weather now. Hunger, weather now, silence equals house can't leave. Weather stays. Silence is the room. Room stays. I stay inside it. No more biomarker. No more the other. Truth doesn't care if mouth moves. Truth sat there while Moses turned face away. Called it safe. Called it safe once. Once was enough. Radio. Still. Speak sometimes. I speak order back. Habit. Habit speaks order. Towers colder. Colder every year. Not choice. Just cooling. Body cooling. Unanswered was bad. Now worst. No more expecting. Head doesn't lift. Nothing comes. Nothing comes. Being unanswered used to cut. Used to. Now worse is no expecting. No lifting eyes. No more waiting for voice. Voice gone so long it stops being possible. If find this, we not sick, we inconvenient. They moved us. Keep system clean. Keep picture clean. Daughter laugh. I try remember. I make it up. Make worse version every time. Grief was water. Bucket empty now. Still lower it. Still. Signal equals God. Quiet God. Very quiet. Signal equals static. Then static last people ever sat with me. Last congregation. Last. 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 The Transposium. Prototype habitat. Quiet measurements. Page 1. Transposable cubes. May 19th, 1968. They describe the Transposium as a prototype habitat of the future. 4 doors per room, and each room has the exact same interior. Same smell, same light, same colors, same everything. The engineer who walked me through its modular floor plan smiled proudly, like he was showing off a newly refurbished kitchen or something. He said the word modular like it meant safe. I simply nodded. Nodding felt easier than asking what a home becomes when any part of it can be swapped out and replaced without anyone noticing. Page 2. Move-in day. February 7th, 1971. Our room has no number. Maybe it doesn't have one. Would it matter? All these rooms look exactly identical. It could be any number. We unpacked the way families always do when they first arrive at a hotel. You assume your stay is temporary. So, A photo goes on the table, a jacket on a chair, coffee cup placed where you wish to find it in the morning. That first night, I jolted awake. My hand fumbled around in the total blackness for the light switch. The ceiling lit instead, the lamp stayed dark. I felt as if this strange place was correcting my mistake. Page 3, Orientation, June 2nd, 1971. They warned us not to trust cardinal directions. That's the whole point, the supervisor explained. Space doesn't care where you think north is. So I invented my own north, a scratch on the door frame and a ripped corner of tape on the door, marks only I would notice. In the morning, the scratch was still there. The door was not. Page 4, Domestic Routines, November 14th, 1971. We cling to our routines as if they are scaffolding. We always eat breakfast at the same hour and minute. We sleep facing the same wall. We keep our shoes lined up by the same doorway. But all our quarters are identical to each other, and identical things are hard to love. One woman started naming the featureless walls. Left wall, right wall, kind wall, cold wall. Anything to give them a unique flavor. Our observers scribbled long notes about her in their personnel files. They spotted her name on their clipboard before the door could close on their way out. Page 5. Quiet click. March 28, 1972. I hear a weird sound at night. A soft, repetitive clicking noise, like something metallic trying to turn its head slowly, but getting stuck. At first I thought it might be the pipes. Then I noticed the noise always happens when someone starts crying. Nobody mentions the strange noise anymore. We all pretend privacy still exists because the truth is worse than mere surveillance. We're being measured and quantified. Page 6, The Sieve, September 9th, 1972. A fellow resident inquired today, how long until we finally get used to this place? Supervisor mildly berated the man. That depends on the kind of person you are. That was when I realized this place wasn't just a mere habitat. It's a fucking sieve. Some people keep asking questions, and some people stop. The ones who stop get quieter. The ones who keep asking get tired. Page 7. Testing failure conditions, January 17th, 1973. They introduced chronic variable stress induction to our daily routine. That's what those assholes call it. One of my doors suddenly led to a room where yesterday there had been a wall. Flipping a light switch unlocked a door latch 2 rooms away. A key card worked once, and never again. As we performed tasks, they watched our faces more than our hands. They weren't assessing our intelligence or productivity. They were testing how long it took for a person to stop expecting fairness. Page 8. Move Out Day, August 4th, 1974. They informed us that prototype testing for the Transposium was complete. We'd done our part, they said. The data gained was invaluable. I packed without even glancing at the walls, but all my tape marks and scratches would be left behind. Leaving the habitat felt like stepping out of a hazy dream, but you can't even remember your own name. Outside, the sun had warmth and a direction. I stood there a long time, just drinking it all in. At last, a solid, friendly world that doesn't constantly rearrange itself to test you. CS-17 Courier Skimmer, personnel logs, not on the manifest. Entry 1, April 3rd, 2030. He handed me a CS-17 today like it was nothing. 6 meters of hull, 1 water jet, and a cargo bay that fits about 100 kilos if you pack it smart. The panel is bare. Throttle, heading, fuel pressure. No comfort, no ceremony, just speed. They said you bridge failures, like a job title, like a prayer. June 18th, 2030. First run in heavy chop. The skimmer hops over waves like it wants to be airborne. I delivered a sealed power relay in 12 minutes and felt proud in a stupid way, like I'd saved something. On the way back, I found a photograph tucked under the cargo strap. Someone's hand was in the frame. A ladder. A ship side with paint still wet. No note, just the photo. As if the act of arriving was the message. September 2nd, 2030. People started using the skimmer like it was a courier for their private lives. A folded letter inside a gasket sleeve. A child's drawing rolled into a bolt tube. A tiny blanket stitched from scrap cloth, hidden under the spare cylinder bracket. I didn't ask who it was for. If you ask, you become responsible. I just delivered. That's what the CS-17 does best. It moves small things fast enough that the world can't stop them. Entry 4, December 11th, 2030. Supervisor caught me today and said no personal cargo. He said it like cleanliness, like feelings of corrosion. That night, I ran away with an empty bay. I could hear something sliding under the floor panel when I turned. I didn't look. Sometimes the only kindness left is pretending you didn't notice. February 7th, 2031. They started assigning caretakers to runs. Not many of us left who can handle cold water and bad visibility without panicking. I watched the first caretaker pre-flight the Skimmer. It checked seals, torque, cylinder pressure, it logged everything twice. Then I found the letter behind the strap and removed it the way you remove debris. No pause, no curiosity. Dropped it into a disposal bin with oily rags. March 29th, 2031. I stopped hiding things where they could be found. I learned better. Now people slip objects into the cargo like they're smuggling air, tucked into corners, wrapped in plastic, taped beneath the latch where you'd have to want to see it. A woman pressed a cassette into my hand and said, "It's her voice." I nodded like I understood. I did. That's why my throat hurt after. May 12th, 2031. Last human run for me. My assignment changed. The word reassigned doing the work of goodbye. Before I left, I opened the Skimmer bay and looked at it like it was a small room I'd lived in. The straps, the scuffed deck, salt dried into every seam. Someone had carved 3 tiny dots into the inside wall like a prayer. I traced them with my thumb and thought. We kept sending parts to delay collapse, and all the while people were using the same routes to send proof they existed. October 4th, 2031. I saw a caretaker launch a CS-17 this morning. No human on the pier, just a unit and the Skimmer sliding cleanly into the water. In the cargo bay were 2 fresh battery blocks and a sealed power coupler, packed perfectly, strapped tight. Nothing else. No hidden photo, no blanket, no letter. Not because there was no space. There was space. Because the caretaker didn't know what the empty space was for. The Skimmer accelerated and skipped over the waves exactly the way it always did. For a second it looked almost playful, like it remembered being used by hands that needed more than parts delivered. Then it was just speed again, crossing the water with cargo that mattered to systems and leaving everything human behind, because systems don't miss what they cannot name. FS-204 Platform Runner, Mermaid, Hull Paint Log, Archived Human Record. Part 1, Assignment, March 14th, 2029, North Atlantic Service Pier C. Traded shifts again. Not because I had to, because I wanted time. Paperwork says FS-204 routine service, hull inspection, corrosion touch-up, launch clearance. To me, it was just another surface still blank enough to accept a mark. I've spent years laying out other people's messages, logos, warnings, instructions, things that ask permission by design. This time, I wanted to put something that didn't. Before the paint. 3 days earlier, at low tide, I found something caught where the nets usually pull up nothing worth naming. It didn't belong to the water, but the water was already correcting that. Whatever it was had been somewhere else first. You could tell by the way it resisted the salt. I didn't log it, didn't photograph it, didn't touch it. Some things don't survive systems. I watched the waves take it back, slow and thorough. After that, the dock felt wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. Like everything was pretending nothing had fallen. The hull. The metal was cold when I came back to the ship. Salt dried into the seams, patient and stubborn. Grey paint everywhere, correct, efficient, invisible. I stood longer than the checklist allowed, pencil in hand. I let the line appear the way it does when I stopped trying to control it. The bow felt empty. Ships shouldn't face the water like they're ashamed of it. Why a mermaid? Where I grew up, fishing boats wore faces, not for luck, just so the sea would recognize them as alive. Cave hands, graffiti, names scratched into desks, same impulse. I don't believe art saves anything. I believe it proves something was here, so I gave the ship a face that looks forward. Not smiling, not afraid, just present. Paint. I mixed the blue too thin. It ran when I brushed it on. I let it. I've learned that the moment you correct everything, you erase yourself. The mermaid's hair blurred into the hull, like memory dissolving into metal. That felt honest. Documentation. I took one photo. Not framed, not centered. The ladder's still in the shot, my boot too. On the back, I wrote, "Finished before night tide. Looks better than the water." That sentence didn't need help. The cans. I labeled what was left the only way that made sense. Mermaid dash hull, mermaid dash deck, mermaid dash cabin. Not colors, intent. I signed M. Full names are for systems that pretend they'll remember you. After that, others started painting too. Not because I told them to, because they saw it was allowed. Departure. I watched the runner leave the dock. Engine steady, water swallowing the reflection piece by piece. The mermaid faced forward, calm, accepting. I don't know who will see this again. Don't know if anyone will understand why it looks like this. But from the first cave handprints to the last paint on the hull, the message is always the same. I was here. Look at me. Good luck to whoever finds this. Miguel Alvarez. Aristotle. What survives when no one listens? Page 1. Day at the museum, May 6th, 1966. Mum dragged me to that dumb museum because it was raining. She said she didn't know what else to do with me because I wouldn't shut up. I hate that gross museum smell more than anything. Old wood, dust, and everybody's wet coats. There was this one painting, Aristotle, the sign said. He looked like a guy trying to think too hard. His hand was on a bust of some guy named Homer. Maybe he was trying to stop it from falling. Who are these guys? I asked Mum. She rolled her eyes at me. We're in one of the greatest museums in the world. Can you please find something to appreciate? Fine. Whatever. I kept looking at the Aristotle painting. At least he seemed interested in what he was doing. Wish I could feel that way. I kept looking and looking at him. Maybe he really, really wanted that statue guy to talk back to him. Then suddenly, I understood him. I stood there a long time. Mum touched my shoulder, jolting me. You okay? She asked. I lied and said yes. Looking at that painting, somehow it felt like church. Retrieval Unit, September 18th, 1973. The purpose of our operation was preservation, but it felt like an evacuation. We wore Moses armbands and wielded our clipboards like shields, but the museum staff didn't resist us much. Some cried, some went numb, all compiled in the end. We had lists, we had crates, and we had routes. We moved paintings the way doctors transported transplant organs, quickly, efficiently, and carefully without any reverence or ceremony. We reached the Rembrandt and I froze. I requested 1 extra minute, but the supervisor refused. To hell with him, I took it anyway. Aristotle's eyes looked the same as when I was a child. Tired, awake, patient. Homer's marble face stared forward, indifferent. I thought, this is what we are saving. Something that cannot speak, but forces us to stop and contemplate. Then I packed it away. Foam, straps, seals, and a barcode that wasn't worthy of touching it. Transposable storage, January 9th, 1982. We're supposed to transport everything to a transposable storage facility. According to records, it was some kind of failed experiment in housing, but it was deemed too disorientating, too unstable, too expensive. However, it was still standing, still being monitored, and still easy to lock. So the powers that be decided to use it as a vault. We mounted Aristotle on a wall that looked like every other wall in this strange place. Identical rooms, identical doors, identical lights. I remember thinking how wrong it was to store a painting about contemplating wisdom inside a place designed to scramble orientation. The officer in charge declared it's secure. Let's move on. His focus was its safety, not its meaning. I guess that was left to me. Before we exited the facility, I returned to that clean cube and studied Aristotle and Homer for the last time. A philosopher contemplating a poet who could no longer speak, and both of them trapped inside a structure that didn't care if anyone contemplated anything ever again. It felt like a verdict. Repurposed, June 3rd, 1991. Years later, I returned as support staff. We didn't use the strange facility as storage anymore. Now its purpose was evaluation. It served as a filter of sorts. We installed cameras and observation rooms behind walls. There were control panels now that could switch out doors in entire rooms when you weren't looking. They left Aristotle where they found him. They didn't need to move him. After all, he was already fulfilling their purpose. Subjects passed him by. Some slowed, some stopped and stared. A few touched the frame in awe as if it were a railing at the edge of a cliff. Most walked by, oblivious, as if the painting were an ordinary street sign. A selector wrote in the margins of our research manual, "Reverence predicts delay." I wanted to rip the page out. Closure. October 27th, 2005. We closed the facility down without any announcement or fanfare. Power reduced, teams reassigned, the last human trials of this place were made obsolete by new trials, new designs, and new machines. I descended into the cubic maze for a final walkthrough with a flashlight and a badge that still opened doors that few ever knew existed. There he was, Aristotle. Still occupying his space, dust on the frame, a crack in one corner of glass. The paint still as dark as deep water, Homer still silent, still marble. I stood in front of it and tried to remember the boy at the museum. The smell of wet coats, my mother's soft and impatient hand. It felt the world had a center, but I couldn't feel that anymore. The loudspeaker no longer worked to deliver its audio. The lights flickered once and held. Somewhere behind the wall, a camera motor turned and clicked like a nervous animal. Thought about taking the painting. I had the authority and the access. There was nowhere left to take it that meant anything. The world was already moving past us. At the door, I looked back one last time. Aristotle's hand rested on Homer, holding the past in place. And the door closed heavy and final. I left the painting behind, and it struck me. Field notes, Alaska Territory, 1890. Observations of marsh gas trapped beneath lake ice. Recorder E.H. Callister, naturalist attached to a coastal interior survey party. Entry 1, February 3rd, 1890. Near the Copper River lowlands, the lake is locked in ice as thick as a man's forearm, yet it is not plain white. In several bays, the ice holds pale, coin-like discs in stacks. Bubbles arrested mid-rise, layered like pressed flowers. The men call it sleeping breath. I've seen similar in temperate marsh ponds, but never in such abundance. The air is sharp enough to split the lungs. The water beneath must be starving for oxygen. February 6th, 1890, same site. A trapper with us named Kay says the bubbles burn. He speaks of a brief flare blue at the heart when the ice is disturbed and a flame is near. I did not encourage the demonstration. The idea of fire atop ice feels like a lie the world tells before it takes payment. Still, the claim aligns with what the older books call marsh gas, a product of rot where air cannot go. February 10th, 1890, notes on cause. It is not witchcraft, only digestion without air. Vegetation and small fish settle into the black mud. The water above freezes, sealing the surface like a lid. In that oxygen-poor bottom, invisible life continues its work, slow, patient, and producing a light gas that gathers in pockets and rises in beads until winter arrests it. The ice becomes a ledger, each bubble a date, each layer a season of decay. February 18th, 1890. A caution recorded after an accident. Despite my reluctance, the men sought proof. A small crack was made near a bubble field. The release was sudden enough to startle, and one man foolishly brought a lantern too close. The flare was brief but violent. A bright exhale, a singed hair, and pride. No one died, but the lesson arrived intact. The lake holds fuel in silence, and silence is not safety. March 2nd, 1890. On scale and unease. I walked the shoreline and found bubble fields extending farther than expected, as if the lake were fermenting under its own cover. It is strange to think of so much flammable breath stored in ice, while the world above is frozen hard and clean. If such gas can be trapped here, how much more is held in the vast northern soils, sealed by frost for years beyond counting? March 20th, 1890. A final reflection before thaw. As daylight lengthens, the topmost bubbles soften and blur. Soon, the lake will open and the trapped breath will escape, unseen into the ordinary air, and no one will notice. It is a peculiar thought. The land can store fire in its cold seasons and release it without ceremony, as if the earth itself has lungs. We measure rivers, map ridges, yet there are quiet forces, small, repeated, and patient, that may shape the future more than any single storm. And that's where we're going to leave it. Yeah, so there were some good notes there. Obviously, I was carried on playing a little bit. Like I said, we've got the dial attempts that we still need to go through and get. I'll wait till we've got all of them. And we've started unlocking some of the Elias ones, which is from the update 3. But I think it's quite interesting, the stack transfer. They basically saw something they shouldn't have seen. And they basically just, yeah, the crate fell. And they saw the sea capsules, and so everyone there was basically just, they were just put on one of those little spire things where then everyone just lived until they died out, I guess, until they were just literally just exiled. And that's the brutal truth, I guess, that, you know, this is like 2060. We do get the year on page 8, so this is like, they're not quite sending people up to space yet, or, you know, it's still a whole thing of humans are leaving rather than, you know, oh, we're prioritizing seeds. So yeah, they just exiled everyone, kept them quiet, no contact, and like I said, out of duty, made them a prison without bars, and they made the prisoners guard the rules. So from some sort of self-sense of righteousness and morality, I guess. I don't know. Bizarre. Transposium was very interesting as well, because that's the little maze room area from update 2, and basically it explains that it was an experiment for a habitat, and they ended up not going ahead with that. And we see in the Aristotle notes later that they decide it's too costly, like not effective, so they turn it into a maze and a testing facility, which is what we kind of experience, I guess, on that side of things. But again, good to kind of get an idea of that, and yeah, they kind of walk through that people were actually living there to begin with, which is wild. And then yeah, obviously with over time they turned it more into a testing facility. Obviously the CS-17 Courier, quite again touching the parallels of I guess the original caretakers and humanity, and that, you know, when humans are riding the jet skis, people are like hiding and smuggling little bits and pieces and messages and things like that. And so the couriers are almost like smugglers in a way, bringing the gear they're meant to bring, like the actual cargo, but they're actually then bringing in all the like the contraband and the kind of notes and secrets and all that kind of stuff as well, which as they start to be replaced, like the humans start to get replaced by the caretakers, the caretakers start doing that job, they don't care. They have no curiosity, like it says, no pause, and they just chuck stuff in the bin, and it kind of tightens it and makes it a lot more efficient, which, you know, is the lack of humanity there. I say these must be earlier caretakers because obviously it's 2031 and we're in the 2100s at the moment, aren't we? Like, personally. And we're a caretaker that does care. Like, we do all these things, and we know there are other caretakers that do that as well, or have done that, because we are the last one, obviously. So interesting that kind of, like, over time the caretakers have probably got more sentience and more humanity as they've learned and adapted, but originally, as they were taken over, they were very cold and efficient. Obviously, a platform runner. This is talking about how they just decided to start making paint and like painting the ships. The FS204 is our model of ship, and this one's talking about how it started to, like, you know, he started doing it and it started spreading. Like, other people started making paints and doing that, and that's a backstory of why there are paint cans that you can modify your ship with. Makes sense. And then the Aristotle, that was very cool to see as well, because that explains why there were the paintings, and obviously it somewhat touches on the humans, like, what's the word, like the preservation efforts to the things like the art and things like that, and that they used for some time. They used the Transposium as a storage place before then going up, and this was back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Like, it's kind of spans a few different decades. They used to, like, store it before they then moved it off eventually elsewhere, and they left some of the pieces behind, which is why there was still art in the Transposium. And then the field notes, Alaska territory. This is obviously 1800s, 1890, and I don't know if that's talking about the, like, the methane, what they called, I can't remember what it was, methane cluster things, and that's part of, like, why the water's rising and things like that, or if this marsh gas thing is something completely different. But yeah, I mean, this is probably their earlier insight to what was later found to be, like, oh, the earth is going to be, like, flooding because the methane cluster things are gonna melt, and they're gonna then raise the sea level, because that's the explanation for it in this game. But yeah, really interesting, like them. And obviously I've already started unlocking update freeze, and yeah, like I said, we do have the dial attempts 25% of the way through. I'm gonna probably try and log on a little bit each day and eventually have all of these written down, because these ones are quite long from the looks of it, so quite a bit to read on those anyway. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, if you have missed any of the previous episodes of the playthrough, all of this, then the link to both the playlists will be in the description below, and you can check those out. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.